All right, so imagine this, right? You're with someone you care about.
Yeah.
You're trying to escape the city, all the noise and craziness.
Right.
You find this like super cute cottage, and it's shockingly cheap, tucked away in those beautiful hills of Udi.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the perfect getaway.
Yeah.
But but what if things take a creepy turn? Like that peaceful dream starts to feel kind of, I don't know, eerie.
It is kind of fascinating how quickly that shift can happen, right? Like you stumble upon something that seems so lucky at first,
Totally.
then suddenly it all unravels and you're left feeling, I don't know, just uneasy, the way that initial optimism can turn into suspicion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. You sent over some seriously intriguing material excerpts from this mystery novel, Love in the Shadowed Hills. Now, it's fiction,
Yeah.
obviously.
Right.
But these stories, they grab us because they explore what happens when the ordinary becomes strange, right?
Exactly.
And how we try to make sense of it all. The unexpected, the things that just don't add up.
Absolutely. I think even in a made-up story, we can still learn something about how humans deal with uncertainty, the power of, what others tell us, and how our minds try to create a story, even when we only have a few pieces of the puzzle. It's almost like a safe way to look at those darker parts of being human.
So this story starts with a chance meeting in Udi. Ayan is there to get away from the hectic pace of Delhi.
Okay.
Mira wants a quiet place to write, far from the craziness of Mumbai. They bump into each other at this cafe, the Misty Mug. I love that name.
It's a good one.
And they immediately click. They bond over their love for old books, that feeling of being totally drained by city life. It's like a classic love story beginning. Romantic walks around Udi, a first kiss with a stunning view.
Oh, wow.
And before you know it, they're already deciding to find a secluded cottage together.
That's a pretty quick move, isn't it? Like deciding to live together so soon. It seems like a common thing in these romance stories, though. It sets up that feeling of hope, like they're building a future together, which I guess makes those unsettling events that come later even more, I don't know, impactful.
For sure. And their search for this, like dream retreat, it's so relatable. Everything's either way too expensive or a total dump. And then, completely out of the blue, a stranger at a cafe tells them about this old cottage, crazy cheap, amazing view. Ayan is totally floored by the price, but Mira thinks it's because of the remote location. They move in, overjoyed, excited to make this magical, even though it's kind of dusty, old place their own.
It's interesting, that whole thing about the cottage being so cheap, despite, being such a great place, it kind of raises a red flag, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
why is this so affordable? There's got to be a catch, right?
I think it's a natural reaction, I think, when something seems too good to be true. And then that whole being isolated thing, while it's peaceful, it also makes you a little vulnerable, Definitely. And then we hit chapter 2, Whispers in the Cottage. They're in that honeymoon phase, totally convinced fate brought them together, right?
Yeah.
But then things start to feel, I don't know, off. Ayan picks up on these little unsettling things. First, the guy at the local store, he refuses to deliver groceries to their cottage, flat out refuses. He gets this weird look on his face, starts stammering when he hears the address. It's strange.
Yeah, that immediate reaction, like the store owner scared or something, that's classic in mysteries, right? It tells you right away that this cottage, it has a past, a history,
Yeah.
and it's probably not a good one.
And it only gets weirder from there. They find the front door unlocked one morning, even though Ayan distinctly remembers locking it. Then he starts hearing these faint whispers at night, but Mira just brushes it off as the wind. Then her laptop mysteriously moves from the kitchen table to the spare room. She even gets the feeling that someone's washing them, Notices the curtains are slightly open, but when Ayan checks, there's no one there. Then there are these other odd things, like objects moving on their own, this weird metallic smell that comes and goes. It all starts to create this feeling of dread, and they end up setting up a makeshift alarm system with bells. Their romantic escape is turning into like a real-life horror movie.
All these little things that don't make sense, they're so good at creating suspense because they play on our fear of the unknown, right? It's like
Yeah.
that feeling of losing control in your own space where you should feel safe.
Right.
And then not knowing, like, are these things real? Are they imagining it? Or is it something else entirely?
Right.
It keeps you on edge.
So then comes chapter 3, Unfolding Cottage Mysteries. They decide to check out the dusty old basement. And guess what? They find a loose stone in the wall, which leads to a hidden tunnel. This tunnel opens into a secret room filled with all this creepy stuff. Tarnished mirrors, strange metal figures, dusty old books with symbols all over them, locked, fancy-looking boxes. I mean, come on, talk about spooky.
Whenever you find a hidden room in a story, you just know they're going to be secrets, right? Like that's where the story really takes off. And the way those things are described, the tarnished mirrors, those figures, the books with symbols, it creates this really unsettling feeling like there was something ritualistic happening there, or at least something really weird.
Totally. So Mira, understandably, is thinking ghosts, right? She's leaning towards the paranormal. Ian, though, he's still skeptical, but he promises to look into it. So he starts asking the neighbors about the cottage's history. And just like the store owner, they're super reluctant to talk, acting totally freaked out.
It's like everyone in town knows something bad happened there, but they're too scared to say it out loud.
Exactly. But Ian eventually finds this old man who's willing to spill some tea, some of the cottage's backstory. Turns out the original cottage burned down 59 years ago, a tragic fire. The rebuilt cottage, about 40 years ago, it's had people living there for short periods, but always moving out because of quote-unquote disturbances. And here's the thing. The current owner is this businessman from Chennai who has people just renting it out. He's never even there. But the truly creepy part, the old man claims those metal things they found, they're, I quote, conduits to the other side.
Whoa.
And he says that messing with them has awakened something. He even mentions that the businessman from Chennai, he's the one who bought the cottage. It's all connected.
Okay, so we have a possible ghost story, a tragic past, and then this businessman from Chennai thrown into the mix. It's like, is it the supernatural or is there something else going on?
I know, right? So, Chapter 4, Shadows and Secrets. Ian is conflicted. He decides to keep the old man's spooky story to himself for now. But they decide to go back to the hidden chamber, this time taking pictures of all the artifacts. And this is where things take a sharp turn. They realize these artifacts aren't just creepy, they look old, valuable, and maybe even smuggled. Suddenly, ghosts aren't so scary compared to a possible crime ring.
It's a classic bait and switch, right? You're led to believe it's all supernatural, and then bam! It turns out there's a real-world mystery going on.
So they come up with a plan to set a trap. They pretend to be asleep, Ian's secretly watching from outside, and Mira keeps the phone line open. Sure enough, a masked figure with a key sneaks into the cottage. They confront the intruder, rip off the mask, and it's not a ghost, it's the old man's son, Mohan. He looks totally terrified.
Wow, so the masked figure isn't some scary ghost, it's a scared human.
And Mohan spills the beans, admits he was hired by this businessman from Chennai, Mr. Rajan Srinivasan, to make the cottage seem haunted, to scare away potential buyers. Why? Because Srinivasan is using the cottage as a hideout for smuggling those valuable artifacts hidden in the basement.
So the haunted cottage is a cover for a smuggling operation. And all these creepy things happening were staged. That's wild.
In Chapter 5, The Chennai Gambit, Ian starts digging into Rajan Srinivasan. He finds out he's rich, powerful, well-connected. Mira's understandably scared now. But Ian comes up with this crazy plan. They're going to go straight to Srinivasan, pretending they can help him sell those artifacts.
He's going head-to-head with the dangerous criminal. What does he even say to a guy like that?
So to get in touch with this guy, he drops the name of the LTF Group, a big real estate company, claiming his dad is the founder. Mira's shocked, but it works. They get a meeting with Srinivasan, not in Chennai though, in his Bangalore office. Ian puts on this air of confidence, says he has connections in the international art market, a buyer in Paris who's ready to pay a, quote, substantial price. And get this, Srinivasan buys it. He agrees to talk more about the deal.
So he uses a fake identity to gain Srinivasan's trust. It's risky, but smart.
Right. So, Chapter 6, The Echo of Rajan's Fall. Driving back to Uri, Mira finally confronts Ian about the LTF thing. He admits he just wanted to experience life on his own terms for a bit before joining his family's business. Then they move on to the next part of their plan, getting Rajan to the cottage. Ian calls him, says French experts are coming to check out the artifacts. Rajan's suspicious at first, but Ian reels him in. He says the artifacts are worth way more than Srinivasan thinks, like almost 150 crore per artifact more, hinting that maybe Srinivasan was cheated before. Rajan decides he wants to be there personally.
Smart move. Ian plays on Rajan's greed and makes sure he can't blame anyone else if things go wrong.
So Rajan shows up at the cottage, meets the French buyers. They all go down to the hidden tunnel. The buyers check out the artifacts and confirm they're real, super valuable, like 16 million euros valuable, which is roughly 150 crores. They say they need pictures and a final price by Monday. Rajan's over the moon, promises Ian a 10% commission. Ian and Mira are relieved. They have 3 days to finalize their plan.
It's all coming together, but it still feels so risky.
Totally. Monday morning, Rajan's practically vibrating with excitement, waiting for Ayan's call. And when he gets it, it's not what he expects at all. Ayan's voice is all panicked, saying the buyers were undercover French police, they're all part of a smuggling ring, and Ayan and Mira are on the run. Then, the Chennai police call Rajan, confirming the French authorities are involved, the final blow. Mohan calls Rajan, tells him Ayan and Mira died in a car chase. Rajan tries desperately to call his contacts for help, but no one wants to touch this mess. And then, boom, French and Chennai police are busting into his office. His whole criminal world falls apart.
Wow, what a downfall. All that anticipation for a huge payday, and then bam, it all comes crashing down.
And now for the big reveal in Chapter 7, the masterstroke. We see Mohan, Ayan, and Mira, all alive and well, meeting at a cafe in Bangalore.
Wait, what? They're alive?
Yep, alive and well. Mohan confirms he played his part, convincing Rajan they were dead and destroying any evidence. And then Officer Dubois from the French police shows up, congratulates Ayan, and hands him a sealed letter. Turns out there's a 10 crore rupee reward from the French government for this bust, and Ayan promises Mohan 1 crore for his help.
That's amazing they pull it off. And Mohan gets rewarded for helping take down a criminal.
So how did Ayan even know these artifacts belonged to a museum in Paris, stolen decades ago? Simple, online research.
Right.
He contacted the museum, they confirmed, then collaborated with French and Chennai police to set this whole operation in motion. Ayan later explains to Mira, the most important thing was making sure Rajan was there during the inspection, so he couldn't blame anyone else. With everything wrapped up, Ayan and Mira head back to Delhi.
So satisfying.
On their way back, Ayan finally tells Mira the truth about himself. She'd already figured out he wasn't the LTF owner's son. He explains he was best friends with Aryan Sakdeva, the real LTF heir, who tragically died in a motorcycle accident. He used Aryan's name because he knew Rajan would respect money and power, not out of disrespect for his friend, and their names and initials were similar anyway. And we don't actually see Ayan's real life until they arrive at his actual home in Gurgaon, a modern apartment where he lives with his mother.
That adds a whole other layer to Ayan's character, you know? He's dealing with the loss of his friend, using that connection to bring down a criminal.
And then, bam, the final twist. After this emotional reunion with his mom, Ayan gets a message on his phone. Just one line. Great masterstroke. The smile vanishes from his face and he gets this chill down his spine. Who knows where he is? And what does that message even mean?
Oh, wow. So even though they won, it's like there's still something else out there lurking in the shadows.
Okay, so let's rewind and look at what we just unpacked. We saw how this picture-perfect romantic getaway turned into a dangerous mystery, how appearances can be totally deceiving. What started as a possible ghost story ended up exposing a serious criminal operation. And Ayan, he outsmarted everyone, orchestrated Rajan's downfall.
The way the story plays with your expectations is so clever, right? You're led down this path of spooky happenings, and then it flips, becomes a crime thriller.
And Ayan's thinking, his ability to adapt and use deception to uncover the truth, that's the real takeaway here.
And even though it's made up, it still makes you think about trust, betrayal, the temptation of easy money, and how brave you need to be when facing the unknown, even when it looks like something else entirely. It makes you wonder, how often do we jump to conclusions without knowing all the facts?
It reminds us to look deeper, to question what we see and hear, especially when things don't add up. And sometimes the scariest mysteries have the simplest explanations. So here's something to think about. In this world full of information overload and carefully crafted images, how do you separate what's real from what's fake? What subtle hints are you ignoring? What secrets might be hidden in plain sight? Maybe this deep dive encourages you to look beyond the surface, to trust your gut feeling when something just feels off.
It makes you wonder what you might be missing.